I don't really know how to answer because I feel like I need to hear a specific paradox. Because
Well, I mean,
most
the
paradoxes I'm aware of are just thought experiments that aren't necessarily reflections of the real world, like the Grim Reaper paradox or the grandfather paradox. I mean, there are others like Xenu's paradox. Do you know what that one is?
I'm not sure about that one. The ones that I was really thinking about, I mean, I guess they kind of are experiments, but that's what I was saying. A lot of people in science talk about them, so I didn't know where they would fall. I mean, is that kind of like pseudoscience in a way?
No, I think it probably good. It probably could be good inspiration for thinking of things differently. And this is why I wish Blitz could come up here because he might actually know an example. Because, like, Einstein famously imagined if he was on a train and the train was going at the speed of light, what would that be like? And he also imagined, and that for special relativity, I think some of his inspiration came from thinking about it that way. He also imagined if he was in a falling elevator, I believe it was, or if he was falling, he wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that he's actually moving. The rest of the world around him would appear to be moving instead. And that's part of the inspiration for general relativity. Now, those aren't really paradoxes, right?
Yeah.
And I can't think of one off the top of my head that that could necessarily work. But I mean, I rag on philosophy quite often because it can be very annoying. The philosophy bros or whatever can be very annoying. But obviously, if we want to come up with new and better ideas, we're going to have to think in those sorts of ways. I just can't come up with a good paradox for you, I guess.
Well, a couple of ones that I think about. I mean, obviously, everybody knows Schrodinger's cat. You know, the cat in the box, that
Yeah.
is both alive and dead until you open the box to see. But some people, I guess, mistake it for science because I guess it more is philosophy because it, it's something that you can't test. I mean, once the box is open, the test is over. It's no longer a paradox. It all just kind of fizzles away.
What do you mean it fizzles away?
Like like once you open the box, it's no longer a paradox. I mean,
Oh,
the
the
cat is either
Schrodinger?
alive or
Yeah.
it's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to treat it as if, yeah, that commentary is just basically Schrodinger took the like Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics and said, okay, but if that's really the way we're thinking about this, then what that means is we have to believe that the cat is both alive and dead at the same time um, until we check. We have some
So it was like a
paradoxes
way.
in medicine. I mean, I can see how there could be like tragedies of the common in science and things like that, but not like actual paradoxes or
Yeah,
like
they're
hard catch
technically
22s. Go ahead.
they're technically called paradoxes because they don't apply. They're seemingly contradict. They contradict each other. So you have to you have the hook effect on antibodies, and you have a paradoxical reaction to some drugs. So, for example, with the hook effect, for some people, certain dosages of antigens are enough to generate an immune reaction. For some people, they will go into autoimmunity with the same kind of dosage, which
Mm.
is it's quite paradoxical. And the same situation, it can happen with sedatives and stimulants. Like, for example, for a person like me with ADHD, a stimulant has a sedative reaction, such as Ritalin, for example, that for the general population would be a stimulant. That's a paradoxical reaction.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
it can
and
either it gets you to a baseline and it'll either raise you up or bring you down. Yeah, I learned that about Ritalin not very long ago. I find that is weird.
so and also, for example, the smoker's paradox, which we know that cigarette smoking has some harms regarding the lung health, but we know that it also in certain situations has an inverse correlation with certain diseases, other diseases, which it's fairly confusing. But basically, it's the explanation that human beings are such a complex system of different stuff that while like 99% of humans would react in a certain situation to a drug, there's always that 1% that will react inverse. And so it's totally normal. It's paradoxical. It makes no sense in certain situations, but it's basically just we don't know. We don't know exactly what's happening, or we don't know exactly what's difference, like between an ADHD brain and a non-ADHD brain. But we know that they react differently to the exact same drug.
Sure. So when I think paradox, I think of I usually think of it in terms of like this literally can't be true, but the logic is kind of telling you that both things are true. Or the other sense of a paradox is just like something where it just doesn't make intuitive sense. So like, for example, the twin paradox, that like if you have an identical twin and one orbits Earth close to the speed of light, when they return, the twins will no longer be the same age. Now, that really would happen, but we call it a paradox because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But other paradoxes...
You remind me exactly of another paradox. When you have twins that are equal, technically because they have the same genome, they would have similar development. But we find in certain kinds of true twins that they will develop differently, even when we find the exact same genome of both of them. So basically, paradox for medicine is, okay, our system is so complex that we haven't found everything. So we find these situations where drugs work differently according to people. We find that sometimes the expression of certain genomes can work differently, even when the twins are raised in the same household. So they would be, when I say the epigenetics, if the twins are raised in the same household with the same food, with exposed to the same pollution, all of that, it's paradoxical when they shift, when they start to develop differently. Which it's curious. There is possible explanations for that. We just haven't found them yet.
Yeah, I know. I went to school with these triplets, 2 girls and a boy. The girls, they look really similar, but they also look pretty noticeably different. And they didn't know if they were monozygotic twins or not. And they found out that they are, but there's really some differences. So they're the exact same height and stuff, but there's stuff in their face where it's like, you really actually don't look all that similar. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's technically, Mr. Ian, these are technical paradoxes because we are expecting a similar reaction on all humans, and sometimes we don't get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds to me like paradoxes in a way are a way of explaining things in science that we don't have answers for because we have not either progressed far enough to answer the question fully or give an explanation for the answer that we've found to be, true, like in the case where stimulants will cause different reactions within people with ADHD and people without. It just sounds like it's a way of...
Yeah.
And for example, what Peterson was saying about simulations and taking things to the extreme, this is typically common in my area in computational biology. I can, from data from simple reactions and from simple tests, I can then extend it to a full mathematical model that extends and even goes to some absurd extremes, some paradoxical extremes, in order to get new knowledge. And that's how Einstein devised a lot of stuff. He started to think how the laws of physics would work in extreme situations. So he went into paradoxes in order to try to understand how they work. Yeah. And that's how he came out with his theories.
I want to do a couple more because now that I think about it, I think we might have something here in terms of like, what do we do with these paradoxes? So like, the grandfather paradox for time travel, right? If you go back in time and kill your grandpa, then you were never born. Well, that either means that backwards time travel is literally impossible, or it would mean that there actually can be different realities or like parallel universes or whatever. So it would prove one of those two things, I would think. So that could be an inspiration for like us understanding something. Like we don't understand it, but we can know something scientifically. Like, well, there must be different universes, because if you do go back in the past and do that, then you must have created like a new reality or whatever.
Like a pretty recent one in physics is the concept of white holes as an opposition
Right.
of black holes. We know we first it was proposed by theoretical physicists by taking the laws of physics to extreme, the existence of black holes. Then we found evidence for the existence of black holes. So they are now constructing, and mathematically it's possible that there's an inverse of a black hole, something that expels everything, the white hole, and they say it's highly possible that there's some or many more than one in the universe. We just haven't found them yet.
Yeah. I chat GPT'd paradoxes, and then I heard of one that I've never heard, or I read one here that I've never heard of before. And now I wish Blitz was here, but it's called the Gibbs.
Careful if the ChatGPT might be hallucinating.
Well, I don't know. It does pretty decent. But it's called the Gibbs paradox, and it says, if you mix two identical gases, there's no change in the entropy. But when you mix different gases, there's an increase in entropy. So I want to know why that is. That sounds really interesting.
Wouldn't that be just because would that kind of show that entropy is not a colligative property? Because the change in entropy, the increase, would be caused by something other than just the addition of more of the gas.
I don't know.
That one is interesting, though.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Is that so? That's something that they've tested, and this happens. This is one of the paradoxes that we just don't know why. We don't know the why, and we know the what.
I guess, yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
it makes sense. So if it seems to contradict the law of entropy. So if you have two boxes with two different gases that are in equilibrium, if you remove the boundaries between those two boxes, they will not be in equilibrium any longer. So they will start to expend energy in order to try to reach a new equilibrium while they were already in the equilibrium. So yeah, it seems to completely violate the law of entropy.
yeah, that's
But this
actually
can
really,
be Gibbs paradox can be easily explained by the moment that you remove the boundary between the two gases, that equilibrium ceases to exist.
Well, I guess that would make sense, because if they're the same, then it doesn't matter if some move over here and some move over there. But if they're different, then the concentration is lower on each side for each of them. So whatever. I don't know. Maybe it is as simple as that. I don't know. But
It would work similar as homeostasis. Basically, the moment that you have two different substances side by side and you remove the boundaries, they will tend to mix each other. They will tend to reach homeostasis.
yeah.
so I guess it's kind of like the two different gases are trying to fight for equilibrium within a space that once you take the divider about between them, they're both fighting for their equilibrium over the whole of tank of space.
I wouldn't say they
Let's say
fight over it,
Artemis,
because neither one is going to prevent the other from doing it. But
Yeah.
they don't think, so they don't fight. So yeah, I just came up to talk about this once because as somebody that has done a master in complexity sciences, I do love this kind of paradoxical reactions.
No, you explained some stuff really well. It
Cool.
actually helped me understand this more.
So yeah, they're useful. They're useful to help us understand stuff.
okay, thanks for that.
Bye,
So
Peterson. Thank you, Mysterium. Your question was awesome.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. So you said you had a few questions. That was just the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just the first one. Sorry, we went kind of a deep dive on that one.
That's fine.
This one you may not be more geared to answer. I'm not sure because because one of the things you put up there is theory is proven body of knowledge, but since we don't have a testable way to do quantum theory, and it's still so widely accepted, just sometimes we kind of take from the result, like just from observation, as opposed to something being testable. Because that's
Well, quantum theory's very much tested. What do you mean by we can't test it?
I thought I was looking up and it said that we don't actually have a way to test quantum theory. What are I'm not sure of the tests that we've done that can prove or not prove, because as scientists you don't seek to prove, you seek to disprove.
I mean, like the photoelectric effect, the double slit experiment, the delayed choice quantum eraser, whatever. I mean, those are tests that we've run. I'm not sure. Like, there are certain aspects of it. Like, there are certain just fundamentally unpredictable and, how do I want to say this? Like, there's some fundamental like indeterminacy and randomness and whatever in quantum mechanics, and so like aspects like that can't necessarily be tested. I think maybe is what that means. And we don't know like what is the nature of the wave function. Well, we have different competing camps because there are things about it I think scientists would say we can't really say. But no, I mean, it's if you ask physicists, they'll tell you that quantum mechanics is actually the most successful and accurate scientific theory of all time. But there are still extremely mysterious things about it.
Yeah, there's still a lot of unknowns. Yeah, I don't disbelieve quantum theory or quantum mechanics at all. I didn't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious as to what they meant by that, but I don't know.
Yeah. And the last question I have completely strays from the bounds of science, and it goes into what you were talking about with the last guest there for a little bit. You were talking about, people taking the Bible and taking religion and using it as a reason for doing things that are wrong. What do you think happened that turned something? Because I've always believed that the Bible itself, I'm not really religious, but I believe the Bible should be something that its whole purpose is kind of to bring people together. But I can't think of a single thing on this planet besides religion that has pushed people so far apart. So what, in your opinion, what went wrong there? Like, what is it? Just is it people being too opinionated and emotional beings?
Sorry, what exactly went wrong? What went wrong with Christians? Not
just Christians, just religion in general.
Because
it was my thought that religion should be something above all else to just bring people together. That's what I take out of religion, is that's what it's supposed to do. But it does the opposite.
Not really, because the problem with religion is that they're, how do you say it? They're mutually exclusive. And that includes, a lot of Christians will tell you that other Christians aren't real Christians. Which here's a really funny thing about that. Christians will say it's the most dominant religion in the world, and they'll say stuff like that, which means, okay, well, actually, the only real Christians maybe are the Baptists. And now all of a sudden, there's only a couple million of you now, all of a sudden. That's just kind of a funny, it's not an important thing we need to actually dissect. But it is interesting how they'll say those two things at the same time. But anyways, the problem is the mutual exclusivity, which is the real reason I brought that up is because it's within the religions themselves, like Sunni and Shia Islam, or with Protestant and Catholic Christianity, or Eastern Orthodox and Catholic, Roman Catholic Christianity, or whatever. And so I wouldn't say that all of a sudden, obviously the world is on fire. We have all these geopolitical conflicts, and religious lines seem to divide quite a lot of that. and we can't get along, so on and so forth. But actually, these are the most peaceful times in history, and it's not even remotely close. Because, like, if you look at the history of, and our founding fathers were very aware of this, they knew that religion, like in Europe, was the most destructive force, and it wasn't even close. Like the 30 Years' War, I mean, something like 20 or 30% of Germany's population was killed. And that was a war between Christians, right?
Yeah.
And then there's been Catholic and Protestant killings that went on for decades and decades, maybe even centuries, between, for example, like Ireland and the UK, right? And there's the Crusades, and I don't know, the Vikings. The Vikings weren't on a religious crusade; they just kind of wanted to kill people and take their loot. But
Yeah.
no, I think religion has just kind of always had that problem because, like we were talking about earlier, it's been couched as a cosmic battle between good and evil. I mean, it just is a battle between good and evil. We don't even have to, like, say that it doesn't matter how many gods you believe in or what the character of those gods even is. If you just believe that it's good versus evil, well, then doesn't evil deserve anything that gets thrown its way? And isn't anything justified in getting rid of evil or whatever? And plenty of despotic, quasi-religious basket case ideas, like certain types of nationalism or communism or whatever, have been imagined in history. And the same sort of thing has happened, because that's just, when you put it that way, what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah, they kind of take the whole gray area out
Most
of it. You're not allowed to
unfortunate.
make no partial measures, only full measures, because this is evil. This is only evil.
Yeah.
It cannot be just normal or natural. That makes
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
makes
I think
sense.
that's
Yeah.
kind of the problem. And I write about this in my first book. I'm writing about it in my upcoming book, Facts That Aren't True. One of the untrue facts is pre-civilized man lived peacefully and had relatively little violence. That's so insanely not true. It's like literally the death rate among huge numbers of like pre-civilized or whatever groups of people was vastly higher than the deadliest periods of the 20th century, which are famously like the bloodiest times we know about when you scale it down. And because that's just always been something that's been part of human nature. We're deeply tribalistic. Like, think of our closest relatives, chimpanzees. Now, we're more closely related to bonobos, and they just hump all their problems away. But we shouldn't do that. But chimpanzees, I mean, they go to war. Basically, they will rip limb from limb members of other tribes, even though they're the same species. We have been like that throughout our evolutionary history, and it's kind of unfortunate. And that's why people are the way they are. That is the root of a lot of racism. And it's why people that live in cities are more egalitarian and more tolerant of other groups of people, because to them, it's normal. Like when you're a kid and you grow up around people that look different than you, all you think is that's what people are like. But when you don't understand that. Something that a lot of people won't really admit because they think it loses them brownie points, or because they don't want to admit this about themselves, perhaps, is that most racism is just deeply seated ignorance, and people are actually capable of overcoming it. People don't rationalize their racism. It's in us, and it's in every single group of people. Right?
So you think that this kind of
like the people in North Sentinelese Island, they will kill any white folk that come there too. They'll kill anybody that comes there, no matter what they look like, whether they're white, black, or even Chinese. Right? What was I gonna say? So where were we going? Oh,
you don't think that this comes from a conscious thought? Then, like, it's not the fact that we have I know, the brain that we've developed. Because
there
of
are
the way
people that
we see
rationalize
this.
it. Yeah, there are horrible
there
people
are.
like that, and those are the real racists. Like, who's that? Like Jesse Lee Peterson. Who's that guy that's like the leader of the white supremacy group? I always forget what the hell his name is. Oh, damn it.
I'm
What's his
not
name?
certain.
He got caught on camera, like, literally crying, blubbering once, being like, it was white people that made slaves of their ancestors, so how dare they? Blah, blah, blah. I always forget that guy's name, but like I said, there are people that, like, intellectualize it like that. And so,
But for the most part, that's not what really goes on. It's just kind of, I see them as different, therefore.
yeah, no, not David Duke. It's, I always forget his name, but, it's not Jordan Peterson either. He's never said anything like that. But, a funny thing is, if you look at a lot of, groups, anthropologists who study like, tribal groups or whatever, some of them, their name just basically translate Richard Spencer. No, I don't think it's him either. But their name translates to the people, like the Dinka tribe. That's what it means, the people. And so other people just basically aren't people. And that's a sentiment that's been Eric Peterson. Fuck you. And that's a sentiment that's still exists kind of in the present. That same kind of justification was used for slavery. It was used for all kinds of horrible things.
Just the fact that we are different.
Basically.
They really translate to just the people. They believe that their people were just, what are we?
Maybe it is Richard Spencer. I don't think that's... Oh, it is Richard Spencer. Okay, I was thinking Richard Spencer was really old for some reason. But yeah, that is the guy. Okay, cool.
This man was filmed blubbering and crying because of...
Yeah, it was like a hot mic thing. I don't know what he was crying about, but he was just like... He was just on this white supremacy tirade, and for whatever reason, he was like basically crying while doing it. So, yeah, obviously his racism is a compensation for some deep-seated insecurity that he has.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but before I go, I do want to suggest something for reading or maybe watching. There's a good video on YouTube that goes over it pretty well, but it doesn't talk about everything. Do you know anything about the similarities between religions going as far back as ancient Egypt?
Maybe a little.
Oh, you should really look into it. It's crazy the amount of different, like complete similarities. Like the sun god of Egypt was born on December 25th.
Oh, that stuff. Yeah. Okay.
And
most of that is really not accurate. I would point, you could actually find some stuff on TikTok about that. I would point you to Dan McClellan. I don't know if you know who he is, but he addresses quite a lot of that. Like the stuff about like Osiris or whoever, he also had 12 apostles. That's not actually really in Egyptian culture really anywhere. And then there's some like spurious things with like that line up with Christmas or whatever, and most of those are just like not at all true. And some of them they're just leaving out details or whatever. But I would look into that.
Yeah, well, I think the reason that it says about December 25th is because it's the sun god, and the winter solstice is what it's talking about. Not obviously not. Because I believe in the way that they describe it about the Egyptians is myths and legends, not religious fact. What you would call religious fact. I put that in heavy quotation marks.
Sure.
But yeah, I won't take up any more of your time. But I love what you do, man. I mean, I've been watching for a little while, and I love it.
Well, thank you.
I wish that I was as well versed in some of this stuff to have these kinds of discussions. I'm just not.
Well, buy my book and then you will be. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it might help, but okay. Thank you.